I was fluffing the couch pillows, still hearing the faint hum of the vacuum in my ears, when Daniel's phone lit up on the coffee table. He'd left it unlocked, something he almost never did. My hands were still damp from dusting, but curiosity got the better of me. Just one glance, I told myself, just to clear my mind. But when I scrolled through the recent calls, my breath caught like a knot tightening in my chest. The same number kept popping up, again and again, like a drumbeat I couldn't ignore. Dozens of calls. Some in the early mornings when he said he was at the gym. Others past midnight when he was lying right beside me. My pulse roared in my ears, louder than the ticking clock on the wall. Who on earth was he calling that much? My stomach twisted so hard it felt like the room tilted. I whispered under my breath, barely hearing my own voice. Who is this? No work contact gets this many calls. The phone felt like it was burning my hand, so I dropped it back onto the table and tried to steady my breathing. Just then, I heard the sound of his car in the driveway. My heart jumped, and I forced myself to smooth my hair, force a smile, and look calm. When Daniel walked in, tossing his keys with that casual shrug, I knew I had to act like nothing was wrong, at least for now. Rough day at work? I asked, keeping my voice light, almost playful, though my chest felt like it was caving in. He didn't even look at me properly, just shrugged and muttered, "Yeah, just the usual. Nothing new." Nothing new. The words stung, as if he were dismissing not just the question but me along with it. I studied his face, trying to catch a flicker of guilt, but he was already moving toward the fridge. I forced a smile, though my jaw ached from holding it. My mind kept circling back to that number, over and over, like a cruel chant I couldn't silence. Was it a colleague? A client? Or was it someone who knew him in a way I no longer did? The doubt gnawed at me, scraping against every memory we'd built together. I could still remember our early days, how he'd call me during lunch just to hear my voice. Now, it seemed, those calls belonged to someone else. I folded my arms, leaning against the counter, and pretended to listen as he talked about traffic and deadlines. But inside, my thoughts were running wild, every detail of his story dissected for cracks and shadows. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, not to feed the paranoia. Yet deep down, I already felt the shift. The invisible line that once anchored us had started to fray, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to tie it back. That night, I lay beside him in the dark, pretending to drift off, but my eyes stayed wide open, fixed on the faint glow of his phone charging on the nightstand. Every buzz, every soft vibration sent a jolt through me. I wanted to reach for it, to see if that number appeared again, but instead I stayed still, listening to his even breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of someone else. The silence between us felt heavier than words. I couldn't stop replaying every moment. His late nights, the sudden bursts of secrecy, the way he'd guard his phone like it held state secrets. My mind twisted into knots, each thought sharper than the last. Was I losing my mind, or was I finally seeing the truth I'd ignored for too long? The woman I used to be, the one who laughed freely, who trusted easily, felt like she was slipping further away with each unanswered question. By morning, my resolve hardened. I couldn't just sit back and swallow my doubts anymore. If there was someone else, I needed to know. I needed proof. As I watched him leave for work, I made up my mind. Whatever this number was, whoever was on the other end, I was going to find out. And deep down, I already knew the first step. I couldn't shake that number from my mind. It felt like it was etched into my memory, the way a scar never fades. So later that week, when Daniel was busy in the shower, I grabbed a pen and scribbled it down on the back of a grocery receipt. My hands trembled as I pressed the digits into my phone, every second of the ringing dragging me deeper into a pit of dread. And then, a woman's voice answered. "Hello?" she said, sharp and impatient. My throat went dry, my voice barely steady as I asked, "Hello, may I know who's speaking?" There was a pause, like I'd startled her. "Who's this?" she snapped, annoyance lacing her tone before muttering, "Wrong number," and hanging up. I sat there frozen, staring at the blank screen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Wrong number? No, that was no accident. I stared down at my phone, the silence of the house pressing in on me. My fingers were still shaking, and I felt the heat rising to my face. A stranger's voice, a quick hang-up, the same number over and over, it all screamed of something I wasn't supposed to uncover. I pressed the phone against my chest, trying to steady myself. I knew I had crossed a line, but there was no turning back. The question wasn't if Daniel was hiding something. It was what. That night, I tried to play it cool, but the words kept bubbling up inside me like boiling water I couldn't contain. As we sat at the dinner table, I casually twirled my fork and asked, "Anyone new at work? You've been on the phone a lot lately." My tone was light, but my heart was hammering. I watched him closely, hoping for something, anything, that would explain it away. He froze for just a split second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Then his eyes narrowed and his voice snapped sharper than I'd heard in years. "Why are you monitoring me? It's just work, Emma. Stop being paranoid." The venom in his tone hit me like a slap. He'd never called me paranoid before. Defensive. That word echoed in my head louder than his actual voice. I dropped my gaze to my plate, pretending to be embarrassed, pretending his outburst had silenced me. But inside, something shifted. His anger didn't scare me. It confirmed what I already feared. If there was nothing to hide, why lash out? Why shut me down? I chewed slowly, nodding, as if I was swallowing his excuse, but in reality, I was tasting the bitter proof that my suspicion wasn't just in my head. After dinner, he buried himself in his laptop, tapping away as if the world outside his screen didn't exist. I sat on the couch with a book open in my lap, but I couldn't read a single word. My eyes skimmed the same line over and over while my mind replayed the sound of that woman's voice, sharp and dismissive. Wrong number. I clenched my fists just remembering it. I thought back to when Daniel and I first got married, how open he used to be. He'd leave his phone lying around, ask me to answer calls for him, even share silly texts from coworkers. Now it felt like that device had become a vault I wasn't allowed to touch. The distance between us had grown so quietly, I hadn't noticed until it felt like an ocean. And that ocean now had someone else on the other side. As I watched him type, I made a silent promise to myself. I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into doubting my instincts. I needed proof, something undeniable. If he thought calling me paranoid would shut me up, he was wrong. Because the next time he said he had to work late, I was going to be right behind him, whether he knew it or not. The following week, when Daniel said he had to work late, my stomach twisted, but my mind was already made up. I grabbed my keys, slipped on a jacket, and waited until he was a few blocks ahead before following his car. My palms were slick against the steering wheel, my heart racing faster with every turn he made. I told myself to stay calm, to breathe, but it felt like I was chasing the truth that had been running from me for months. He finally parked near a quiet cafe on the edge of town, a place we'd never gone together. I pulled into a spot across the street, ducking down low in my seat. My chest rose and fell like I'd just sprinted a mile. And then I saw her. The same woman's voice I'd heard over the phone now had a face. She was waiting by the window, looking around until Daniel walked in. When he spotted her, his entire expression shifted, lighter, brighter, like I hadn't seen from him in years. They didn't just greet each other. They embraced, close and familiar, like they belonged to each other. My throat burned, but my hands were steady as I reached for my phone. I snapped photos one after another, each click of the camera cutting deeper than the last. Proof. Finally, proof. I zoomed in through the windshield, my camera catching the way his hand lingered on hers across the table. They leaned in close, whispering, laughing, like two people who didn't have to sneak around, like there wasn't a wife waiting at home. Each smile he gave her felt like a knife twisting in my gut. For years I had begged for his attention, and here he was, handing it to her like it cost him nothing. I thought back to our anniversaries, the times I had planned dinners, bought dresses, lit candles just to see that kind of smile again. I had convinced myself he was just tired, too stressed, too distracted with work. But in that moment, staring at him with her, I realized the truth. I wasn't the one he wanted to come alive for anymore. That role belonged to someone else. My fingers tightened around the phone, but my body felt strangely calm. Instead of tears, there was clarity. Instead of crumbling, I felt something hardening inside me. I clicked another photo, whispering to myself, dozens of calls, secret meetings. You're done, Daniel. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And now I had the proof to burn his lies down. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, though it was probably no more than 30 minutes. Every gesture between them was another dagger, but I refused to look away. He leaned across the table, brushed her hair back from her face, and kissed her as if no one else existed. My stomach turned, but I didn't flinch. I held my phone steady, taking the shot that sealed his betrayal forever. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those late nights he said he was at the office, all those mornings he left early, telling me he needed to beat traffic, it had all been leading here, to this very cafe, to this woman. The puzzle pieces clicked together in the cruelest way. And while he laughed with her inside, I sat outside, alone, realizing just how blind I had been. When they finally stood to leave, I slumped down in my seat, heart thundering, praying he wouldn't notice my car. He wrapped his arm around her waist as they walked into the night, and that image burned itself into my mind. As their silhouettes disappeared down the street, I whispered to myself, "It's over." He doesn't know it yet, but it's over. And with that, I started planning the moment he would face everything I'd uncovered. I waited until the weekend, when there were no excuses for him to hide behind work. The photos sat printed on the kitchen table, each one like a loaded weapon waiting to be fired. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady, like I'd rehearsed for this moment all my life. When Daniel walked in, humming to himself, dropping his keys in the bowl, I felt the calm before a storm rise in me. Dozens of calls. Secret meetings. Lies, I said evenly, sliding the photos across the table toward him. Care to explain? His face drained of color the second his eyes landed on the images. His mouth opened, then closed, like he was drowning without air. Emma, wait. It's not what you think. She's just a friend. His voice cracked under the weight of the lie. I slammed my hand on the table, cutting him off. Friends don't kiss in cafes, Daniel. My voice didn't waver, though I felt my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. He reached for me, desperate, but I pulled back before he could touch me. His pleading eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I felt nothing but ice. "It was a mistake," he blurted out, his voice breaking as if that single word could erase the months of betrayal. "Please, we can fix this, Emma. I'll end it. I swear." His hands trembled as he reached for the photos again, as if tearing them up would rewrite the truth staring back at him. For years, I would have clung to those promises, begged for his attention. But not anymore. I crossed my arms, my body rooted like stone. "You broke something you can't fix," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. His eyes widened, panic settling in where arrogance once lived. He was used to me folding, to me patching the cracks he created. But this time the cracks were too deep, and I refused to be the glue. He tried again, softer this time. Emma, don't do this to us. Think about what we've built, our life, our home. His words floated around the kitchen like smoke, but I wasn't inhaling them anymore. I thought about all the nights I'd waited up, all the mornings I'd trusted his excuses, and realized the life he was begging for wasn't ours. It was only mine now. I stood, slowly, letting the chair scrape against the floor. That sound alone made him flinch. "No, Daniel, you did this to us," I said, my voice sharper now, cutting through his pleas. I gathered the photos from the table and pressed them into his chest. He clutched them like they were burning, his eyes begging me for mercy I no longer had to give. For a split second, I studied the man in front of me, the same man I once loved so deeply, the man I thought I'd grow old with. But standing there, stammering, trying to salvage lies with half-truths, he felt like a stranger. I wasn't looking at my husband anymore. I was looking at the man who destroyed the very foundation of my trust. As I turned and walked down the hall, his voice cracked behind me. "Emma, please, we can make this right." I didn't stop, didn't even look back. Because deep inside, I already knew this confrontation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something far bigger. And my next move would change everything. The very next morning, I sat across from a lawyer in a sleek office, the smell of polished wood and coffee filling the air. My hands didn't shake as I laid the photos on the desk. He adjusted his glasses, studied each image, and then leaned back with the faintest smile. "With this proof, you'll walk away with everything. House, accounts, assets," he said confidently. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled, a long, steady breath that felt like release. Relief coursed through me, not just because of the money or the security, but because I wasn't powerless anymore. He had tried to make me doubt myself, tried to gaslight me into silence. But here I was, using his own betrayal as the key to my freedom. The balance of power had shifted, and it was mine now. I could almost taste it. "Perfect," I told the lawyer, my voice firmer than I expected. "Let him keep his mistress. I'll keep the life he tried to steal." The words rolled off my tongue like steel coated in honey. In that moment, I didn't just feel like a betrayed wife. I felt like a woman reclaiming her name, her dignity, her future. And I knew Daniel had no idea what was about to hit him. When I got home, the house felt different. No longer like a cage, but like a stage where the final act was about to unfold. I gathered my things quietly, folding clothes with deliberate care, slipping important documents into a neat folder. Each drawer I closed felt like a door shutting on the life I'd once shared with him. I wasn't running away this time. I was walking out on my own terms. By the time Daniel came home that evening, everything was set. On the dining table sat a crisp envelope with his name on it. Inside, the divorce papers, stamped and ready. Next to them, a short note in my handwriting. "You gave her all your calls. Now she can answer when you lose it all." I didn't linger in the house. I wanted him to come back to silence, to absence, to the echo of his choices. I could almost picture the moment he'd step inside, humming like he always did, expecting dinner, expecting me. Instead, he'd find the papers, the note, and the gaping hole I'd left behind. And for once, I didn't care how broken his face might look. He'd built his secret life call by call. I was just cutting the line for good. I drove away that night with the windows down, the cool air whipping through my hair like a baptism. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of his lies on my shoulders. Instead, I carried proof, power, and a future that belonged to me alone. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, Daniel's name lighting up the screen, but I didn't answer. I let it ring out, over and over, until the silence felt permanent. I knew what came next. The desperate apologies, the hollow promises, the begging. But those words wouldn't touch me anymore. He had gambled everything on a number he couldn't stop calling, and now he would pay the price written into our prenup, every last cent of it. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to break anything. I had already won. As the city lights blurred past, a calm spread through me. This wasn't just revenge, it was liberation. I had taken back my story, ripped it from the script he thought he was writing without me. And while Daniel sat in our empty house clutching papers and regrets, I was already chasing something he could never give me again. Myself. Months later, I sat at a small cafe downtown, the kind with chipped wooden tables and sunlight streaming through wide windows. A steaming cup of coffee warmed my hands, and for once, there was no weight pressing on my chest, no clock I had to race home to beat. My reflection in the glass surprised me. I looked lighter, freer, as if someone had peeled away years of exhaustion from my face. Sarah slid into the seat across from me, her grin as wide as ever. "You look amazing, Emma. I haven't seen you this happy in years." I laughed, not the polite kind I used to give Daniel, but the kind that bubbled up from somewhere real. "That's because I finally remembered who I am without him," I told her, savoring every syllable. And I meant it. I'd enrolled in the photography course I'd always dreamed about, bought a camera that felt like an extension of my hands. I traveled when I wanted, to places Daniel had always said were a waste of money. I even adopted another dog. My old pup had been lonely, and now the two of them filled my home with the kind of joy no man could ever fake. Of course, word traveled fast in our small circle. I heard whispers that Daniel's mistress had walked out the moment the money dried up. The man who once strutted so confidently now stumbled, his life unraveling piece by piece. I didn't need to see it firsthand. The stories were enough. There was a bitter satisfaction in knowing he had traded everything for nothing. One evening, he even tried to call me from a different number. I stared at the screen for a moment, my heart oddly still. Then I pressed block without hesitation. I wasn't interested in his excuses, his guilt, or his attempts to drag me back into the ruins he'd made. His voice no longer had power over me, and that silence felt like the sweetest music I'd ever heard. Every morning now, I wake up with a sense of choice I never felt before. I choose where to go, what to do, and who to share my energy with. No more lies, no more shadows. Just me, standing in the sunlight, living on my terms. It's a kind of peace I never thought I'd find again. One afternoon, as I left the cafe with Sarah, the sunlight washed over my face, warm and golden. I paused for a moment, tilting my head back, letting it sink into my skin. That glow felt like more than sunlight. It felt like a new beginning, proof that life could bloom again even after betrayal scorched it to the ground. I whispered to myself, almost like a prayer. Losing him was the best gain of my life. I no longer carried shame or heartbreak. I carried freedom. The kind that comes when you've walked through fire and discovered you're stronger than the flames. The past was behind me, its lessons etched into my bones, but it no longer defined me. My story wasn't about being cheated on. It was about what I built after, piece by piece, choice by choice. As I walked down the street, camera swinging at my side, my dogs waiting at home, I felt lighter than ever. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough. More than enough. I had turned his betrayal into my liberation. And with every step forward, I knew I'd never again settle for less than the life I deserved.